Welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and thank you very much for listening in. This last couple of weeks has been really interesting. Had some great messages come through, and there's one in particular that I want to chat about for this podcast, which is workshops and how to prepare for them and what to expect and what you should do when you're a participant in a workshop. It's quite timely because when this podcast actually gets released, I'll just be finishing my time in Perth, Australia, at an annual convention there as a demonstrator and presenter and hosting workshop. So I'll talk more about that in the next edition of the podcast. But I think that workshops are one of those things that are great for everybody. We should all do them. Should all be involved. I love running them. I love hosting them, and I love it when the participants really get a kick out of what they're there for and go home with more than what they expect. So as I'll talk more about it, but I want to talk about it as someone who runs and organises the workshops, what I do, what my plan is before I go into workshops, but also what I think the participants should do. You guys and girls, what you should do when you go into those workshops and what you should expect out of it from someone who's hosting a workshop. So we'll talk more about that. And secondly, did a recent one-on-one workshop with a fella, Max, who I've had a lot of involvement with over time. And I want to talk about a Japanese black pine of his that we recently quite heavily styled and really gave it a kick along to the next level. But there's a story behind it, and sometimes just going a bit slower can get you there quicker, which I've said many times. So we'll chat about that as well. So buckle up, and I hope you enjoy. Righto. So workshops. Hopefully almost everybody that's listening to this podcast has been involved with workshops in one way or another, whether you're loitering around the back and just checking out what's going on, or whether you're actual hands-on with your tools working on a tree. I know the first one can be quite daunting, and I think it helps the person who's running the workshop to realise that and to maybe give you a bit of a warm embrace and say it's going to be okay. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. It's a learning opportunity. It's a great chance for you to get to work on your bonsai with fellow enthusiasts, and I love them. I really do. I think that they're great. They're great for our bonsai network, for our bonsai community, but also for you to gain a lot of insight about a lot of different trees in a really short period of time. They generally run for about 3 hours. That's the normal run workshop that is organised by a club or by people. But 2 to 3 hours is about right. I think anything more than that can be a bit draining. You can get a bit lost. It's hard to see the forest for the trees when the time goes on and on and on, and you can get tired from it too. So I reckon that 2 to 3 hours is just perfect. And I got sent a message from Josh over in Colorado, of all places. Hello to my Northern Hemisphere listeners. It's lovely that you do reach out and that you enjoy the podcast as much as people that are close to me in Australia. So his question was, there's some workshops coming up, and what should he do? Like, how should he approach it? And is there something that I could advise to help him get as much as he possibly can out of the workshop? And I thought that's great, because I run them in my own workshop. I run these workshops with people all the time. Great group of people, sometimes new, sometimes veterans, and they all get on really well. But I've just come back from Adelaide, as I mentioned previously, and ran workshops over there with, again, people that was their very first workshop, and others had been in different workshops with different people and different bonsai professionals and at club levels. So they had quite a lot of experience, and it was great because a lot of different people got a lot of different things out of it, and there was a lot of what I love, what really gives me a bit of a push with these things, and lets me know that I'm on the right path with how I'm managing expectations, or I'm facilitating the supply of information and technique to people, is the thank yous afterwards when people come up to you and say, that was great, really loved it. And especially when it's their first workshop and you know they've been a bit nervous about it. And it's understandable. Like I said, I get that initial nerve, but once you get through that, once you actually, you're confident enough to say, no, I'm definitely doing this workshop. I'm going along, and you've picked out a nice piece of material. Well, then, I want to try and, through this podcast, arm you with a little bit more information, whether it's your first or your 100th workshop, on how you can prepare yourself to maximize the value that you get out of it. Because it's like anything. Great artists don't make great teachers, and great teachers don't make great artists. So you've got to try and pick the right person that you can connect with to do the workshop, and you've got to go there armed. So sometimes, you've got to be able to draw the information out of people, and you've got to ask the right question. So anyway, getting back to some real workshop basics that I want, that I'd expect, and what I think will make you more successful with your workshops and make you enjoy it, is you've got to be realistic. Okay, so you've got a limited amount of time, and they're really short. Like that 2-3 hours can go in the blink of an eye. Once you start getting into it and you start discussing things, you start putting wire on trees and you start pruning and you start shaping, that time goes really, really fast. So don't go in there and expect to get an encyclopedia of information from the host or the organizer, the manager of the event. Be realistic, all right? I've seen, I find it funny when people rock up to a workshop and they've got, a car full of trees. There's 8 or 10 trees in there, and realistically, when you work on a tree yourself, that sometimes, depending on the nature of the work involved, it can be 5-6 hours for yourself to work on one tree. So when someone turns up with up to 10 trees, I look at it and go, okay, well, pick one. Which is the one that you want to start with, and which is the most important to you, and which is the one that you want to get the most information from. So my advice to you is you can definitely turn up with a lot of trees like that, but don't be surprised if you go home and 9 of the 10 haven't been touched, because you just do not have the time. And you're also sharing that time and that space with other people. So the person that's running the event, so me, what I do is I make sure that I work in a circle, and I'll go from one participant to the next, to the next, to the next. And I provide as much as I possibly can in that short period that I'm with that person. And it's like I've got my blinkers on and I'm just focused purely on them and their tree. And I give them as much as I can, but there's a limited time that I can spend with them. So I pass on the information, get them going, show them a few little techniques and tricks, and go, right, now, are you okay? Show me. Yep, right. Now you do it. And then I move on to the next person. So you're not getting 2 or 3 hours of sole attention. It's not a private workshop. It's a group workshop. So just be realistic with your expectations, so you don't go home from the workshop disappointed. You should go home from the workshop really happy and really content and bursting at the seams with the new information that you've got. So take a tree that you want more information on, or you want guidance about. That's the trick. The piece of stock that you've got in the backyard that you look at and go, I love it. I love something about the tree, but I just don't know. I can't see the bonsai within. And that's where I find that I can be of real assistance to people, is by looking at material that I can look at and simply go, oh, okay, what about this for a trunk line? And what if we cut this off and we did this and we did that? And you start making those adjustments to the piece of material, and the person's eyes sort of spark up and go, oh, wow, I didn't know that was in there. That's where you can get benefit from someone that's had a lot of hands-on time with trees and a lot of design time making bonsai, and that's where the workshop can be really beneficial. So be realistic with the number of trees and take along a difficult piece of material. It doesn't always have to be something that's, it's got the shape and all you got to do is put a little bit of wire on it, prune it a little bit, and it goes home looking beautiful, because, realistically you could probably do 90% of that yourself at home. And that's not what the workshops are for. The workshops are for information and for learning and for experience. So that's the benefit of the workshop, is that it's like going to a class where you're knuckling down on a couple of really specific things, and the person who's hosting it can give you the pieces of the puzzle that you're missing. That's the benefit. For instance, black pines. If you come along with a Japanese black pine, then the expectation would be that, yep, sure, you get some styling tips, you get to find the bonsai within, you learn a little bit about some technical stuff like wiring, but it's also that you can ask further about it and go, well, okay, now it's autumn, winter, what should I do right now for my other black pines that I've got in my collection? But then, okay, cool. So that's right now. What about the rest of the year? Can you tell me about, how it is that you look after, black pines, or what's your technique for decandling, or, how do you handle the spring growth that comes around? Like, what do I do with the candles, and what's the technique for doing that, and how often should I be doing that sort of thing? Fertilizer, when do you... So you can take along a pen and paper and not only get the hands-on practical experience, but also gather as much information as you possibly can. Take along a tree that maybe you don't know enough about. It might be a pomegranate, or it might be a Scots pine, or it could be anything. A Shimpaku juniper or whatever, and try and use that short period of time that you have, that 2 or 3 hours. And realistically, out of 2 or 3 hours, you're probably going to get, 15, 20, half an hour of solo time. Use that time wisely and gather as much information as you possibly can, and jot it down, put it into your phone in your notes section, or plug it away in your head so you never forget it again. Work on your tree, get the practical stuff, get that warm fuzzy, but take the information which is invaluable. That's where you'll get the best bang for your buck doing the workshops, as far as I'm concerned. Ask things like about repotting. What does the person do, and what mix do they use? What frequency of repotting would they use? Is there a technique that they'd use when they change the angle of a tree? Like, how do they do that sort of stuff? And that's where you'll find that you're going to dig a lot deeper than what the person who's there to help you or facilitate your learning is going to appreciate. Like, they're going to go, wow, okay, well, yeah, it's off topic, but this is what I do. And I think if you can have like a list of questions and not grab them by the scruff and say, listen, sit here for the next hour and a half and give me all this information. It's as they swing around, as they come past and they're there to help you, grab them and say, hey, listen, I know it's a bit off topic, but while we're doing this, can you talk to me about repotting and fertilising? What do you do? What's your technique? How often do you do it, and what's the benefit of that, and why do you do that? Like, give me the information. Be a 3-year-old kid. Why? But why do you do that? Okay, but why? Because that's when you're going to find the person's going to open up and just go, oh, okay, you're really interested. And I can guarantee you that any bonsai professional that you talk to, the one thing you can't get them to shut up about is bonsai, because they just love it. That's why we're here. That's what we do. And I always say, reach out for help if you need it, because one, it's really going to help you. But secondly, I love talking about bonsai. It's the core of who I am. It's like what I believe my purpose in life is to help with bonsai, because that's what makes me really happy. And being around trees, whether they're mine or other people's, there's something about it. That connection continues to grow. So while it's really important with these workshops to have something hands-on and to go home with that beautiful butterfly that turns up as a scruffy looking piece of material and goes home looking beautiful, if you can, it's not always possible, but if you can at least put it on the path to being something beautiful and get a plan for it, well then, yep, tick, job done. But the real benefit's going to come from the pen and paper and the questions and the knowledge that you're going to gain from that person that's there. They've been chosen by whoever it is that's coordinating the workshop, or you've signed up to a workshop for a reason, because that person there's something about how they do what they do that makes you think, yeah, this is worth my hard-earned money, and I'm going to get something out of this. And go there with that intent that you are going to get value for your money. Not just go to a workshop because it's something that you think it'd be a nice way to spend a couple of hours. Go there and really maximize what you can get out of it. And another tip, if you can connect with the person who's hosting the workshop and possibly stay in touch with them as well, it's definitely going to help you longer term. Now, I say it every time. I'm more than happy to help. And that's not a hollow promise. It's from a lot of experience, from a lot of people that listen to this. You should know that if you send me a message and you ask me a question, then you're going to get a response. I would hope that whoever else is running workshops around the world, that they've got that same sort of approach as well, where, it's not just the, walk in, walk out, do the workshop, see you later, never to be heard from again. It's like, cool, okay, well, is it okay if I shoot you an email and maybe show you where I'm at and you can give me the final touch-ups on this thing if you don't get it finished? Yeah, sure, more than happy to. Well, I've got there might be another question that pops up after this about repotting. Is it okay if I get your 2 cents on it? Yep, sure, go for it. That's exactly what it should be. So with the workshops, you go there with your own agenda, right? So be prepared to sit there, listen, and absorb as much as you possibly can, but go there with the intent that, hey, when I walk out of here, I want these questions answered, or I want as many of them answered as I possibly can. So it's going to help me with other parts of my bonsai journey. It's going to help me with other parts of my yard that I've got concerns on. And yeah, sure, I've got 45 bonsai lined up in the car. I've only got one on the bench in front of the workshop, but hey, can you just have a look at this for me and tell me what you think's wrong with it? I don't want you to work on it, but the 2 minutes that you're with me as you circle around demonstrator doing this workshop, what do you think's wrong with this one? Or what would you do with this? Or what would you do with that? And accept the fact that the person has to share the time equally amongst everybody that goes to the workshop. Don't be the person that hooks into them and holds them, but be the person that's there and just go, hey, listen, can you help me with this and help me with that? So when the workshop's over too, it's over as far as time goes, because I know these things can definitely drag on, and you'll find that your time allocation, because there are other workshops, there are other things that the demonstrator needs to do. So use the time that you've got when you're in the workshop wisely and effectively. Don't just sit there and go, well, and that's the other side of what I want to talk about as well, is as a demonstrator, as a workshop host, as someone who's an educator, as someone who wants to help you as much as they possibly can. Before the workshops, I'll go there with pertinent information or techniques that apply to now. So I always start the workshops, disarming people by saying, hey, look, we're all here together, we're all here to work. When I'm talking with one-on-one, it's a soul conversation. But if you hear something, or if I bring up something that's important regarding a species, I'll say, hey, let's talk about juniper care. Has anyone got junipers? Yep, cool. Okay, well, just start over here and we'll look at this tree and we'll talk about what I do. So that way you'll find that I as a workshop organizer will definitely look to pass on as much information as I possibly can about the specific trees that are in front of me. But I'll also have my own agenda where I, like the participants, I want to ensure that whoever comes along to a workshop goes home brimming with information and with a smile on their dial and with a beautiful tree that they're happy with. It's on a path, may not be finished, but it's on a path. And I will bring up things like, okay, it's late autumn now, it's early winter. This is what I'm doing around my yard. So be prepared for it. These are things you need to prepare for. You're coming up to repotting season, so make sure you've got this. Or I'd say when it's repotting, let's talk about soil mix. This is the sort of soil mix I use and why I use it. Couple of little tricks when you're repotting, make sure your trees are firmly secured in the pot, and this is the reason why when spring gets here. And so I make sure that the people that come along don't just sort of go, okay, well, I've got this one tree and I want to cut a few branches off and wire it. Okay, thanks very much. That looks great. I really haven't learned anything. I suppose it was worth my money to get my tree worked on, but, from my point of view, it's like I want you to go home and go, wow, you get home to your partner, to your loved ones and go, you bore them stupid with, hey, did you know that when I'm going to repot, I'm going to use this material because this is what it does to the root system, and when I repot, I'm going to be tying it in, and they're sitting there yawning into their cereal going, come on, give us a break. But really, that's my objective, is to make sure that that everyone that comes along goes home satisfied and with more than what they expected, with more information or more care or whatever it is about bonsai in general, that maybe next time they go along to a bonsai nursery, they go, oh, there's a black pine. I know when I did that workshop with Scott, he said how easy they were, and that if, they only get looked after really twice a year, taking out repotting. So, and I've got his details. I know I can message him on Instagram or Facebook or send him an email or text or whatever it is. So, you know what? I'm going to have a crack at that. I feel confident now because I know that when I get to, this time of the year, I know that I'm going to reach out to someone like Scott and they're going to help me with it. And, yep, I'm going to dip my toe in the water. Thanks very much. And that's exactly what it should be. That's where the workshops give you that confidence. They encourage you, they build you up, but you get something immediate gratification from the tree that you're working on at the time. Don't expect to finish it. Seriously, if you go there with a shrub and you want to walk out with a magnificent bonsai, that ain't going to happen. Not every time. Not absolutely guaranteed. That's not going to happen every time. It may every now and then, but what you've got to expect is to be on the path. All right, so you're going to have some wiring done, you're going to have some pruning done, you're going to have an angle, you're going to have a trunk line, you're going to have a front, you're going to have all the stuff, the components that you need to continue the work yourself. And workshops are about you getting your tools out, about you doing the work, not about someone coming and working on your tree and you going, oh, that's great, thanks very much, see you later. It's about knowledge. So go there prepared, use those little tips and tricks, and I guarantee you the next workshop that you do, it's going to be something that you're going to love. Now, I'm all about the strength and health of your bonsai, of trees in general, but really the core, and I can't say it enough, the strength of your tree dictates everything, right? Whether you should work on it, whether you should leave it alone, whether it needs to be repotted, whether it needs to be sprayed because it's on the weaker side, whatever it is, the strength and health of your bonsai should be the only thing that makes you say yes or no to doing work on a tree. Also, the right season. But given it's the right season to do work, like major bending on a tree, or whatever it is, or defoliation or decandling, whatever the technique is that you're going to use, the strength and health of the tree should dictate to you whether you should do it. And you don't need a professional's advice to know whether the tree is strong enough to handle what you're about to do with it. You can look at that tree if you've had it for a period of time, and when if it's strong enough. If spring comes around and it just barely pops out a pair of leaves, and there's no extension of growth, and there's a little bit of dieback, and the colour of the leaves look a little bit funny. Why would you defoliate it? Why would you go through and remove those leaves and put the tree under stress and try and kick it along? When it's strong enough to be decandled. If spring's coming around, the buds are tiny, the new needles are really small, the thing looks a bit weak and limp. Maybe it's overdue for a repot. Why would you go and decandle it? Why would you put the tree under that kind of stress when it's barely hanging on? It's in a holding pattern, waiting for something to improve, for its strength to improve. And that's the story that I want to talk about, is this holding pattern. And I see a lot of, not a lot, but I do see the odd tree here or there that comes into the workshop that's quite spindly and thin, and then I'll hear the story that it's 35, 40 years old, and it looks seriously like it's a 4 or 5 year old whip. It grows a branch, it drops a branch. It sort of doesn't do very much. It's not being fed. It hasn't been repotted in a very, very, very long period of time, but it's old. Now, doesn't make it a great bonsai. It makes it an old stick in a pot. And this story I want to talk about is from an avid listener to the podcast, a great supporter of mine of Bonsai Matsu, and a good mate, Max. It was 12 months ago to the date. I did a demonstration at one of the local bonsai clubs here, and it was on Japanese black pine. So this is a Japanese black pine we're talking about, and there'd been a deceased estate where a few trees that had clearly been neglected were acquired by a few people that come along to workshops with me and do classes and are involved with Bonsai Matsu. And both of them have got stories, but I'm only talking about this one specific one at the moment that Max got. It was it's like an informal upright with a real slight bend on the curve left and right, a little bit of movement. Old tree, old Japanese black pine, but sort of not much thicker than, probably, about 2 or 3 centimetres, something like that. And pretty consistent up to a point where the apex had died off on this thing. It was growing out of the pot, by a good 4 or 5 centimetres, something like that. That's how long it had been since it had been repotted. And when it was potted originally, from memory, I'm pretty sure it was in a really small pot. So the tree must have been a lot smaller and then just been left to grow. And the tree had gone into this holding pattern. So it had, imagine it went straight up, and then there was a bit of a right angle kink, and then this big branch sort of grew straight down against the trunk, almost the same length of the trunk. And the tree is about, 35, 40 centimetres tall, something like that. And there's a lot of dead branches on it. And I remember at the time when I'd finished my presentation on Japanese black pines, it sort of came up a discussion where it was like, hey, can you help us with a couple of trees that are floating around? And I remember this one got presented, and I said, look, it's on the brink. It's waiting for something to happen for it to die, to be honest. So my advice would be do nothing. Get it repotted, get into some really good soil when the time's right, and make sure that once it's been repotted, it's firmly secured, and then you want to start the feeding regime, and you do not want to go through the decanting process. You want to leave it alone and just let this thing be. Let it recuperate. I love trees because they are designed to go on and on and on, and give them the opportunity, put them in the right environment. They will sprout, they will take off, and they will rejuvenate. They will become a young tree, even though it's very old material. Like this thing's got to be, I don't know, in the 30 to 40 year old bracket. It's an old tree that's hung around, and at one point would have been a really nice informal upright and had real potential, and then it's been neglected for one reason or another, and I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that's a fact. And then it had gone into this holding pattern where it would grow a little bit, it would die a little bit, grow a little bit, die a little bit. So it was doing enough just to survive. So the care regime really became put your scissors away and put on your gloves to give this thing a cuddle and look after it. Put it into a really nice spot in the yard, make sure it's getting a lot of sunshine, lots of airflow, lots of food, lots of water. Let those roots, trim off all the old dead stuff, let them rejuvenate, let them grow again, and let's just see what happens, and let's review it in 12 months. And fortunately, 12 months was just the other day. And Max came along to the workshop, and he set along this black pine. And when it walked in the door, I couldn't believe it, because it's chalk and cheese. In 12 months, he's done such a great job looking after this black pine that it's got back budding. On old wood, there's fresh buds coming. The candles from last year have pushed. There's lots of spring growth. There's lots of great colour on this thing, and you compare old needles to new needles, and it's chalk and cheese. Old needles were thin and wispy and discoloured and barely hanging on by a thread. To the new ones were really strong, beautiful colour, really sharp, they've really got some kick about them, and the new buds that are setting for spring coming up for us. Because I'll just justify. So we're late autumn at the moment, heading into winter, which is a great time to be doing some bud selection and needle plucking on your black pines, as well as some heavy shaping. And so the buds that are setting for spring are really nice. They're really strong, and you look at the tree and you go, yep, right, that's perfect. Great job. Big pat on the back. You've done an awesome job. It's really secure in the pot. Lots of roots have grown, and it's only been 12 months, and it's like, that's just amazing. So to prepare for the workshop, it had been allowed to dry out a little bit as well, not excessively. Don't if you're going to do heavy bending on the trees, you can let them dry out a little bit, but that doesn't mean putting them into into your lounge room for a week without water, because you'll kill the tree. Just let them dry out just a little bit where the soil goes touch dry, which could be a day without water or something like that. For us in Melbourne, we've had lots of rain and cold weather, so Max just simply took it out of the rain to ensure that it could dry out, and just monitored the watering from there. So it was in a nice condition, this tree. So I was actually really excited, because when you've got a tree that's strong and healthy, that's ready to go, that's bounced back, you've got options. So from a tree that was teetering on the edge of dying, and just hanging on by a thread, to something now that I looked at and went, you've got plenty of options for future branches, and now we can actually get into this thing and we can style it. So rather than being, stuck with a tree where there was sort of this right angle branch at the top, tiny little bend off the trunk, and then a really long branch where we'd sort of have to work with what we had options. So when we looked at it, first question I asked, how attached are you to the tree? And Max is like, I've only had it 12 months, really not attached to it. So, let's do something. So we come up with this, we formulate this plan together, which is always the way I like to do it when you're going to do something pretty serious with a tree. That you get buy-in and you make sure that you're both on the same path together. And effectively, what we did with this black pine in a workshop over a couple of hours was we put raffia on a certain part of the trunk and taped it up. And we put on the big bending jack, which is a device that you can slowly turn to compress things in. And we folded this trunk in half. And we didn't get breaking, we didn't get tearing, because we did it in a controlled manner. It wasn't done in 30 seconds where you snap a tree. We slowly used this jack to compress this tree down, slowly. So what was a long, pretty much straight piece of material has now bent down around on itself. And as we did that, the apex of the tree, or part of the tree that had died off, you can imagine for one, a circle. So it goes from the left side, curves out, comes back around to the right-hand side, not in a perfect circle shape, but a rough, with movement in the trunk, around to the right-hand side, and then continuing that up to the left-hand side again, almost framing against the trunk, is this beautiful piece of deadwood that goes just up to the just a little bit higher, I think, or maybe just a little bit lower than the height of the trunk, where it bends at the point where we've done the raffia and the tape, because we controlled the pressure point when we did the bending. By having this jack and isolating exactly where we wanted the bend, we could protect the bark with the raffia and the tape. So if there is any splitting, holds moisture in, allows the tree to heal, and we can prepare to go forward. So you've got this beautiful piece of deadwood, which really just looked like a dead branch. It's now on the left-hand side, coming up and framing this nice tight circle that we've got, this tight bend of the trunk that comes back down around on itself. And what was a funny shaped sort of right angle branch at the top now comes out and curves around and goes back around to the right hand side of the tree. But also at that very point, there's some beautiful branches which come across to the left hand side as well. New little buds that have grown, that have started to push out. So what I'm getting to is we've taken this long straight stick that was on the verge of death, and by Max doing what he did and repotting it well, by doing all the things that you should do to improve the health of your trees and improve the strength of the tree, he got it to a point within a really short period of time. 12 months is nothing in bonsai. And in that 12-month period, he's got this tree to now, based on using some pretty advanced techniques and making sure that we did things right, he's got a tree now which is on a path that's very exciting. He's got this beautiful piece of material that, in another 12 months' time, we'll give it time to set. We'll focus now on bud growth. There's no wire put on this tree other than the guy wire to hold the bend of trunk in place, which is, just a small piece of 1 mil copper wire, which is really unobtrusive. He's got some work to do on the deadwood to remove old bark that's set on there and focus on that styling side of it. But as far as foliage goes, leave it alone. Let's give it another 12 months or review it when it gets to decandling time to see if it's strong enough to be decandled or whether it's something that we allow to grow, in bits and pieces. We've isolated a sacrifice branch as well, which we're going to use for trying to increase, or definitely increasing, the thickness of the trunk, but also to bring extra vigor to the tree by allowing something to really take off on this thing that's been throttled for so long, to let the tree take off and get some real strength and vigor from a sacrifice branch, which will then encourage further back budding down the line on the tree, and then we can start in a year's time to build the tree. So if you think about a tree that's almost dead, and within 2 years' time you've got really a pretty special little bonsai that's almost ready to be put into a bonsai pot, that in maybe another year or two's time from that, so a 3-4 year period from death to ready to show, that's pretty cool. And that's why I love trees and I love bonsai. That you can get that quiet corner somewhere in the back of your yard, and that can be the recovery area, as long as it's not jam-packed with trees and they all get their fair share of sun and water and nutrients, and you look after them and you feed them and give them everything they should, and you make sure that, because they're on a weaker state, the pests aren't getting in there and there's no fungal issues. These things can rejuvenate. They can come back. Just be patient. And that's it's okay to wait. It's okay to say, do nothing other than the right thing, which is the horticultural side. Build up that side of the bonsai first. Then let's make the bonsai. If we'd done this 12 months ago, I reckon, one, we would have snapped the trunk because it would have been dry as a piece of firewood. And secondly, without all this budding, the stress that we would have put on at that point, we would have had no chance of getting this back budding, and there would have been further dieback. So we would have gone through the technique. We would have got the trunk shape that we wanted. Would it have been a long-term bonsai? No, there's no chance. There's no way that thing would have done it. So, making a massive transformation takes that little bit of time, a little bit of care, and sitting back, waiting is the magic. All right, that wraps up another podcast. As I said, next one will be a bit of a focus on my time in Perth over there with a couple of international guests, and I'll let you know the ins and outs of how everything went, because it's always nice to hear the other end of that. I think I know I was always interested and wondered, well, what happens when this happens, or what happens when they go to their dinners, or what do they talk about behind closed doors? Anyway, so I'll have a bit of a yak about that next time on the podcast. Want to wrap this one up by saying, you get the opportunity to do a workshop, put your hand up. If you're a newbie to a workshop, make sure that you let the person know as well. Make sure that you say to them, hey, I'm a bit uncertain. I'm not sure what I should and shouldn't be doing. This is the tree I brought along. What I'd like out of it today is this. I would like your help with this component. Or, it can be something small. It can be, set the apex for me, or is the apex too full, or, this branch here, it really annoys me. What can I do about that? Or, can you, and go there armed to ask questions. Can you help me with, or can you tell me what you do with this? There's always going to be environmental things that are different between you and me, where you are and where I am. But the general gist of things and the overall horticultural stuff, you can definitely dig deep in it. It might be that certain things aren't available where you are compared to where I am, but we can still chat about it, and we can still talk about it, and we can still make alternative arrangements, or you can find alternatives to what it is that you want. But just make sure that you go armed with the desire to take as much information as you possibly can from that workshop, and go for it. Put yourself out there, because once you've done one, guarantee you it won't be your last, because they're great fun. And sharing that time with people from all different walks of life we all have that common focus on these little trees in pots that we love so dearly. It's really encouraging to be in that environment and work on trees with other people. It can be very isolating working by yourself in your own place. You go along to club meets, you go along to shows. It's very different to actually getting your tools out and sitting side by side with someone and working on trees and talking about it, and gathering further information and inspiration. It's life-changing. And don't forget, like I was talking about the story with Max, going slower can make it happen quicker. So take your time, do the right thing, reach out to someone if you need sort of guidance, help, or a little bit of inspiration, a bit of a push in the right direction. Make sure that you get that as well, and just keep that moss, keep that stone rolling down the hill. Make sure that no moss is going to gather on it, because you want to keep your bonsai momentum going at all costs. They're worth it. I love them, and I'm sure that everyone listening to this podcast does too. So thank you for sticking around. Really great, and I love seeing and hearing all the positive stuff that's happening with bonsai around the world. It makes me smile from ear to ear, and I'm glad that we have this opportunity to chat together. And I look forward to the next time. So until next time, as always, happy bonsai.